with the training, I have to get different training. I have to do a lot of things that are downtime or non-billable things. So I have to roll that into my rate. So I had to do a mind shift change. I had to do a complete 180 on my thoughts and how I thought of clients and how I build them and what I'm doing for them.
You're listening to the Spotlight edition of The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Louis Prosperi. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I'm Louis Prosperi. Our guest is the owner and principal consultant at VARC Solutions, which specializes in QuickBooks and Quick-based training and consulting. Robin Hall, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here today.
Well, let's start off at the very beginning. Tell us about your journey until this point.
Sure. It's been a almost 25-year journey so far. So I'm Robin Hall. I'm with VARC Solutions. I started it from the ground up. It started out just as myself doing bookkeeping and primarily on QuickBooks or just on QuickBooks. And, as I started doing that, then I was kind of trapped into, if I'm doing just bookkeeping, then it's a Monday client and a Tuesday client and a Wednesday client, and realized there's no time for vacation or any of that because I'm tied down to the day. So as I started doing it, people were like, well, can you teach me how to do this? So I started training. And so I found out I was pretty good at that. And then so I started doing bookkeeping and training. And that's when I started bringing somebody else on, because as I was training, I couldn't answer the phone. And so little by little over the years, I added things as I needed them. And I kind of grew slowly. And what I feel was smartly, just incrementally. I never added a bunch of people all at one time, and I have had a great journey. I have been very successful at seeing opportunities in front of me and being able to jump on them. And it's changed the trajectory of my business in ways I didn't even know were options at that point. So things that I've added on to what we do for our clients, not just bookkeeping, but really we do anything that touches QuickBooks. So we've gotten into some operations and workflow management and things like that kind of help our clients, but we may get called in to help with bookkeeping or accounting, but then we widen our scope.
Sure.
Because we've been very successful at those things. And so fast forward 25 years, we're 18 people strong and offering lots of different services, not just bookkeeping, but sometimes they just start out with the bookkeeping.
Well, that's actually a very good story. What I really liked about the story was the fact that you started off with just a one-person doing Mondays, A company, B company, and so forth. And I think a lot of the people that are listening to this can relate to that, because that's almost everybody who started in our career or in our profession tends to start that way. The question that really got to me was when you switched from doing to training, did that really help shift how you looked at your practice? Because when you have to teach compared to just doing, it's a completely different mindset, right? You have to be a little more cognizant of the steps and so forth. Did that improve your business practice overall? How did that work?
Yeah, so it definitely improved it. And I'll tell you a funny story about the other thing about that is you also have to have a mind shift change, because training is a higher dollar commodity. And so, when I started my business, I was a W-2 employee and I had the W-2 mentality. And so when I went from W-2 employee to I'm a business owner and I have all these extra costs and things associated with it, I actually had a client that was one of my first clients and is still a client today. We're doing vastly different things for them now as we did 25 years ago. But, he said, you're too cheap. You're not charging enough. And I said, what? And he said, when's the last time somebody said no to you? And I said, well, they haven't. And, I'm thinking that's a great thing. And he goes, well, if nobody's never ever said no to you, then you're too cheap. You need to raise your rates. Again, this is 25 years ago. I'm coming from a W-2 mentality. I was charging $30 an hour for bookkeeping. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. My next call I get, and they're like, what's your rate? And I'm like, $32.50. Like, I still had no idea how to do that. So
Right.
I had to learn that. And I had to learn with the training, I have to get different training. I have to do a lot of things that are downtime or non-billable things. So I have to roll that into my rate. So I had to do a mind shift change. I had to do a complete 180 on my thoughts and how I thought of clients and how I build them and what I'm doing for them.
Robin, that's kind of a insightful thing for all of our listeners to think about. If they don't get no's when they put their price out, that's not a good sign, right? You know how the old adage, no customer is a bad customer? That's not necessarily true in the sense of if you offered your services for free, Robin, I'm pretty sure you'll have a lot more customers, right? I don't think that would be a
Right.
problem, right? So I really like that adage. And it's interesting how one of your customers brought you in. So that's fantastic. I'm a value-based pricer, menu-based system, and I'm all about value rather than time inputs. So I love every time when we go into that world every now and then. So thank you for bringing that back into the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so even early on, I had that, and you say that. So I had that mentality, but, it's with doing, and I'll throw something else in there because I'll tell you my trials and tribulations on this is, I also want to do a value billing because people are like, oh, you're so fast. I'm like, well, I get paid by the hour. I want to be, fast, but, I should actually be paid more because I am fast and because I can do something in an hour where somebody else takes 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
And so it's taken me a long time to do the value billing. And there's still some that I can't do on value billing, or I have not wrapped up my head around how to price that because there's too many unknown factors. So 25 years in, I'm still learning that value pricing and where to apply it and where not to, because it's difficult. And then you have to also convey that value to the clients, and they don't always see that.
Yeah.
I had a friend actually used to, when I would come in and help them, he would call me negative cash flow. And that was because he didn't see the value in the accounting. He just saw it as money going out the door.
Right.
Where, his partner did see it as a value. That's why I kept coming back. But he would just say, hey, negative cash flow, how are you doing today? Because he just saw dollars go out the window when I was there, not because of that I wasn't doing anything right, but he did not see the value in the end product.
You brought up an interesting thing about bookkeeping or accounting services is we only see them when they're not working, right? When everything is running perfectly, that seems to be our base standard, which doesn't make sense. Like what? When your internet has to be on 100%. If it's below 100%, it's not work. It's not good, right? With accounting services and what we do, we only get recognized when things go wrong, right?
Right.
So I can see from his perspective, if you're doing such a great job, you're practically invisible to the system, but it's the key function that makes it run. Because if you take the record keeping and how to track information, they have no clue what they're doing, right? At the end of the day,
Correct.
It's an interesting concept, and that's probably one of the most difficult things for what you just indicated as a way to adjust or see value compared to a salesman or say it's selling actual product that goes out the door when you're selling systems that they're expected to work at 100%, zero error factor. Does that make sense?
Correct. It does. It makes sense. And so I know we're going to talk about automation. And so that's one of the things with automation is, it's they need to understand the pain so they can really appreciate the automation.
Right.
So, and that's one of the things that we talk about with our clients is tell me your pain points. Tell me your process. We also do a little development here at VARC as well. And so I have a little story that will kind of go with it. And they're like, all those steps you're doing, it's too many steps. And I said, I can make any process into a lot of steps or make it seem like a lot of steps. I said, take making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It sounds really easy. You take the bread out, you put peanut butter on, you put jelly on, you put the bread together and you eat it. But if you really want to talk about making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, every step that you have to do going in, and if you like follow them to the letter, then it's probably 100-step process, but it's so innate you don't realize that you're doing 100 steps.
Well,
So yeah, so we can make anything, but if we do it enough, it becomes natural for us, and so we don't realize we're doing 100 steps. So one, it's good to realize where their pain points are, where those steps are falling short, and two, then we need to make sure that they understand that there's 10 pain point steps, but there's maybe 90 that are going naturally that we want to keep going natural. So we want them to go with that flow and not lose that. So we don't want to gain efficiency on 10 and lose efficiency on 90. So it's a balancing game, and it's a communication game with them as well.
that's a good analogy, but making a peanut butter sandwich, because if you actually take it to where the peanut butter is created, go all the way to the farm, there's literally thousands of steps for that to be actually. So that makes perfect sense, and we only see the ones that don't work. I love that analogy, where the only ones that we see is when the part that doesn't work, right? And that's where the business owner only sees the ones that doesn't work. He doesn't see the other ones. So let's talk a little bit about automation, because that's one of the big topics that everybody talks about it. Everybody says, let's automate, let's make things automatic, but it's not a simple process to automate, right? First, I think you highlighted the first thing is to systematically outline as many of the steps as possible, so that when you automate, you don't lose a few steps. Is that correct?
Correct. What I tell people when we're automating is, one, you have to know your place in the process, and you need to understand what comes before you and what comes after you. So if what's coming to you isn't complete because the person before you didn't finish their task, then you need to know, and you need to be able to push that back. Same thing for what comes after you. You may not think one little piece of information, something in the memo, something on there is meaningful, but it's meaningful to the person that comes after you. And so, knowing not just your role, but what's before you and what's after you is very, very important. The other thing when I'm teaching people this is, I tell them, we're going to go the long way for a minute so that you understand all the steps. So, and I tell them, think back to third grade. I don't even know if this happens in third grade, but it was somewhere in third or fifth grade. Go back to third grade where we learned division or multiplication, and they taught us the long way. And then they go, okay, here's some shortcuts. But you wouldn't understand those shortcuts unless you did it the long way, because you still have to have an understanding of what's going on so that you can see if there's issues or mistakes and not just blindly trust a process.
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of people fail, is when you automate, they're like, I have nothing to do. It's going to blindly work. And then when there's something that's out of the ordinary, maybe that didn't get thought of, because they don't know the process, then it becomes a bigger issue. And so if we know what those things are, then they just become little, pebbles in our shoes, and we can go, oh, I see that pebble. Let me take it out. Let me brush it aside and let me move on. And I fix that pebble before it gets to be too large.
That's actually a very good analogy. As soon as you said back to grade 3 or 5, I don't know if they do this anymore now, but long division came into my mind, where you had to do that long division where you had the number and you had to do each thing, and that made perfect. And that's then when you go to a calculator, right, which is, it does it all internally, you don't see it, but you would know if something. But the long division was kind of a critical point, and I thought that was, because then you know what division is. Right? If you just do the calculator, you don't really know what the vision is. You just know that when you do these 3 buttons, this number comes up. You don't know what that means, right? So I like
Right.
that.
And you don't have a way to say it's not right.
Yeah.
Like there's times it's like, oh, wait, I didn't hit the 3 buttons in the right order. So now I'm getting a different result.
Yeah. Or if you want to check it, you might have to go back and do it manually to check to see like a sample test. So that is great, because if you outline all of them manually and you want to test the automation, you do a manual one and compare it to the actual. If it works out, you've done a sample test, and then you know that once that's consistent, it should work out. So let's dive a little deeper. Let's go even more detail.
Sure.
Let's take care of the most exciting areas in accounting. These are fantastic areas: accounts payable and accounts receivable. Usually, in a lot of processes, those are probably the ones that tend to get automated the most.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look at accounts payable and accounts receivable. First of all, what factors do you have to factor in to automate the system?
So there's a couple things. It's one, you have to know your cash flow.
Right.
So you can't just say, oh yeah, pay all these bills on the due date. What if cash isn't there? So you've got to be able to know that.
So let's talk about
one
sorry, Robin, let's talk a little bit about cash flow. So what is cash flow? What do you mean by cash flow? Describe that a little more.
So just knowing the movement of the money in and the money out. And so, obviously we're buying things that we need to pay for, and we're selling things that people are going to pay us for. And so if I go and buy some widgets, and let's say I'm in a inventory situation,
Right.
so I may be paying for more widgets than I'm actually selling out, because I'm putting them on the shelf and hoping they're going to sell them. I want to be able to take advantage of terms, which means I don't have to pay for them right now. I can pay for them in 30 days. Or I want to, depending on the price of it, I want to take advantage of discounts. Maybe they'll give me a 2% discount if I pay within 10 days. Those types of things is, how is my money moving, so that I'm not just blindly saying, yep, pay every bill at this time, and assuming that every customer is going to pay their bill on time.
Right. Good. No, the reason why I wanted to tell it, because you hit a very important thing: automation of accounts payable and receivable. If it doesn't tie in the cash flow, it could cause problems with your cash flow. Correct?
Yes. Yes.
So continue with the AP and AR. Sorry but I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, no. Please interrupt as I go. So sometimes I just get on a little tangent. So please feel free. So, one of the things that I like with the automations, one is there is a set process. So I've worked a lot before automation was around, on a lot of things inside QuickBooks. And it was, well, Susie does it this way, and Lucy does it this way, and Fred does it this way.
Right.
And so then company processes were built on people's personalities. And so you cannot grow to a predictable type of company when your processes are built on somebody else's tendencies. You need to have a structure for that. This is how we handle accounts payable. So no matter who's handling that piece of paper, it's handled in the same manner. And so that's part of what automation can help you with as well, is it's not Fred's way. It's not Susie's way. It's not, Sally's way. It is the company way.
Right.
And so if one of them goes on vacation, if one of them gets sick, if one of them leaves the company does not have a dip in what their process is. Outsiders are not seeing personnel changes. So that's one of the things that I really like, is there's so many companies that are so personality driven on all of their processes that it becomes, the company makes it ineffective, because nobody can step in and help. Nobody knows what's in somebody else's head. It's not documented. So by automating, you're taking that human factor out of the equation. I still want some human factor, because I still need someone's brain looking at it. Does
Sure.
it make sense?
Yeah.
But I want the way that we do things to be automated, and I want the human factor taken out. The other thing that I want in there is I want visibility for an audit trail. I want to be able to see when something came in. I want to be able to see who approved it, when it got approved, when it's scheduled for payment, so that I can predict what, if I bring a bill in and I say, it's great. I've approved it. It's set to be paid on this day. Then I'm projecting out that cash flow that we talked about.
Right.
And then if for some reason my receivables don't come in and my cash is below where I need it, then I can push that out. I can have a system tell me, you know what, we may need to push that. So there's so many things that if I can just get out of the weeds, then I can look at a 30,000 foot overview and see things that I couldn't see when I'm down in the weeds so much just processing. The other thing that I really like about automation is I only want to touch paper once.
Right.
I don't want to open the mail, then touch it, then go, oh, well, that's a Friday. And then on Friday, then put it in. And then 30 days later, look through them and then see what's like. I want to touch it once, do everything that I need to do and push it aside. Go ahead. It feels like you want to say something. I can just keep on talking.
Yeah. The thing I liked about is I was really interested in when you talked about the human factor and eliminating the human factor as much as possible. You're not eliminating the person in all aspects, but
No.
I thought it was very unique when you said that, because if it's human based and the person leaves, he kind of takes the system with them, right? And then you got to recreate a new one for the new person that comes in. This way, that doesn't happen. And the error factor related to human interaction, the less human interaction reduces errors, because I thought that was very good. So part of the automation process is taking that out, and I thought that was great. And then you were just starting on a roll on the spending more time on analysis, and that comes into the next question. With automation, you spend more time analyzing rather than doing. Is that correct?
It is. And one thing I just want to correct just a little bit. It's not that I'm taking the human out of it. I'm taking the personalities out of it.
Right. Okay.
And so we still need the human factor. We still need those people. I still need their brain and their intelligence to know what's right and what maybe that I need to dive deeper into this. But I'm taking their personalities and their personal preference out of it, and I'm putting it to a company level.
Right. Okay. No, that's great. So that way we don't, just in case someone's worried about losing their job, we're not removing jobs, right? I got it. Fair enough. That's good.
Yeah.
So when we talk about automation and AP and AR, the key thing is tying it in the cash flow. When we talk about what to do, how do we automate our systems? Where do you start?
So, I mean, part of it is a conversation. So, because of that human factor that we just talked about, people are worried about losing their job and losing their effectiveness in the company. And so they aren't seeing, if I become more efficient at my job, then I'm more valuable to the company. And so we start actually with a conversation. We start with what's working. We start with what's not working. We start with why we need this. So, because if the person that's going to be doing it is not on board, they are going to make sure that it fails.
Right. I got it. That's great sense, because if they don't buy in it, there's that sabotage thing where they're going to just, as soon as they see something, they're not going to give you the whole story, and you're going to have gaps. Right. Yeah. That makes sense. So the buy-in is critical when you go in to set up an automation for AP or anything. Is not only the owner, but the staff has to buy in, or it's going to be very difficult for you to do that as a professional. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And what are the things that you might utilize to not necessarily convince, but highlight why this is better for the employee or the people on the team?
So it's, and that's kind of a complex question, because it really depends on what they are communicating to me, what their either fears are or the process. And, you'll find out a lot from, well, the owner won't do blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Or this will never work because this person isn't reliant. So you kind of take their, you're become, a psychologist at that point. You become their shrink, and let me sit here and listen to all the reasons why it won't work. And then we just kind of take each one of those and break those down. So what if we did this part? What if we took this slow and let's just do a couple vendors and let's see how that goes. Let's work that process. Okay, this has been working. We've worked this for a couple of weeks. This has been working. What if we added a couple more?
Right.
Okay, now that this is working, we have a little bit more time. There's some extra features in here that we can do that's going to save us some time at the end of the year. So I'm going to, because I have this information from the vendors and they filled it out, I didn't have to fill it out. They gave me their
Right.
information for the W-9. You know, those things that you're in the moment, they don't see, that you're saying, this is going to help us in December. You know, here we are, you know, in January right now. This is going to help us in January for a 1099 season.
Yeah.
This is going to help us for those reconciliations. All of those things, it's kind of just not, I told you so, because I don't want it to sound like that, but it's little successes.
Yeah.
It's like you want to highlight those along the way and say, see, look, not see, but here's an example of where we did this. You were doing this and it was taking you about 30 minutes. That's not long, but now it was done and all we had to do is verify that.
Yeah.
We gave you 30 minutes back in the day. So if we find 8 of those, I've given you a whole day in your week back.
Yeah.
So put them in terms that they understand. What else could you be doing? I know you're working on Saturdays. What if we gave you your Saturday back because you've gained all this time during the week? I know you can't do this until after hours, but what if we have this time that's set aside so that you can do this? So it's all about their pain at that moment and talking to their pain. Some people may be gung-ho and want to do it and actually want to go too fast. That can be a burden as well,
Right.
because they're not looking at those details and making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So on both instances, you either need to help speed people up or you need to help slow them down so that they're, again, going back to the core. Here's your job, but here's what comes before you and here's what comes after you.
Well, that's really good. You've actually broken down very, very well, because what I heard during this this thing is basically asking questions and finding out their pain. So at every level, find out their pain points. I thought that was great, and also making it so that it's in their advantage to actually put the automation in. They'll be happier. So I really,
Perfect.
that's great. And it does, so there's no specific, because each situation is going to be unique, because you're absolutely right. And when you talk about individual people, individual systems, there's going to be uniqueness, but I really like that. So what do you recommend when they come in and go, okay, we want it, Robin, we want the automation. We want you to come in and break it down. What solution partners do you prefer? How do you bring, or do you bring in solution partners? Do you bring in certain partners in?
I do. I bring in different solution partners based upon what their need. And so there's not one specific right answer. I mean, anywhere from, and this isn't just AP and AR, I'll hit those in a second, but you know, there's different ones from, you know, getting everybody on a cloud hosting. So,
Right.
you know, we'll do things from cloud hosting so that everybody's in the same environment. And if we have, you know, a 2020 again, we can, you know, my team was able to go home and work immediately and we didn't have to change anything, you know, because we were based in the cloud. So getting everybody in the same spot. So there's cloud hosters we recommend. There's bill.com for AP automation. There's a couple other ones that we recommend for AP automation. There's, you know, training them within their system of QuickBooks so that they make sure that they're utilizing the core accounting software of what they're doing. So we look at them from a holistic approach and make sure that we're hitting all of their pain needs. And I have some CPAs that I work with, because we're not a CPA firm.
Right.
They go, nope, this is our tech stack and everybody must be on all of these products. And I'm like, that's not reasonable for me. I need to meet my clients where they're at, not so much that they change my process, because I will, you know, tell them what's good for them, but I'm not going to make them adapt every one of my tech stacks. But I am going to say, if these are your pain points, these are how we can fix those.
Right. So you're not militant on it. You might do recommendations, I guess is what you're saying, right? Does that make sense? Because if they're kicking and screaming to go on your system, they're probably not going to adapt it properly, right?
Correct. And I have a friend that says, I don't walk into Starbucks and bring my Keurig and tell them make my coffee on my Keurig. So I'm not to that extreme where I'm letting people do that, but I am saying, one, we work on QuickBooks and we touch anything that touches QuickBooks, but there's thousands of products that touch QuickBooks, and
True.
so we've learned of ones that we wouldn't have known about by our clients saying, well, we use this one. And so if it's good, then we'll dive in and learn that one. But if it's like, you know what, from all of your pain points you're telling me, it's only hitting 25% of those. Can we look at some of these other ones that I've been using for years? And you get to make the decision,
Right.
but I want to show you what my expertise has brought.
Right. So as a professional bookkeeper who's doing bookkeeping services and now they're looking at automation, how do they go about bringing automation and solution partners into the business? How did you do it? Like, what was your first few steps in doing it?
So, I mean, as doing QuickBooks for forever, going to the conferences and learning more and teaching at the conferences, those tech stack partners, either approached us or other people in the industry we would talk to. And I do a lot of listening. I talk a lot as well, but I do a lot of listening to what other people are doing because a lot of times I am heads down, focused with my clients. And so sometimes I don't see what's next to me. But when I look up and I say, this is our education time, this is what we're going to learn from other people, from talking to other people. And I have smart people on my staff that, because I know I'm a heads down person, that they're out looking and they're scouring. And so we go out and we find ones that we hear good things about, and then we do our own discovery. And I'm one of those people that it's a eat your own dog food. Some people like to say sip your own champagne. But if I can bring it in house and I can use a product on my own stuff, then not only am I just getting the sales pitch and the here's what's wonderful about us, but I'm using it and I know the good, the bad, the ugly, and then I can train on it better. I can go, you know what, this isn't the best thing, and I'm working with them on this. They're aware of it, but here's how we get around that. So some of the products that I deal with, I'm on advisory councils with them so that if I'm recommending a product, I'm very intimate with it and I know that product. I don't just, oh yeah, we've heard of this one. Try this, see how it works. I want to be confident in my recommendations and I want to be confident in what it can do because I don't want to overpromise. I want to underpromise and overdeliver.
So I'm going to ask you a question. Are there any automation ones that you like? Which ones are you interested in?
So we do. I've been very happy with Bill.com lately.
Right.
My clients are starting to use it as well. And so when I get that email that says client X has received your invoice, I don't have to worry that they didn't get it or it's not put in their AP system. That gives me confidence. And then a couple of days later, it says, hey, this is set for payment. You'll see it in your bank account on this day.
Right.
Those are confidence as the other side of it, not the user of it. And so I have to imagine that that's giving other people that kind of confidence. So that's one that we have. Chipotle is another one that we've been happy with using that. The email communications back from Bill or Bill.com, or I know they just changed their name to Bill.
Right. It's kind of hard because
That
I have the same issue, but I get it. Yes.
yeah. Because you use that word so many other ways, so it kind of needs that .com on the end. But those are ones that the end user is having satisfaction. So not even the user, but the end user. And
Right.
so those are feel good signs, and that's one of the things that I really, really like about that.
So when I know we're talking about Bill, but in general, what you're saying is a solution that not only makes the person using it, which is like you or your customer,
Or my client.
yeah,
Mhm.
but the people that are on the other side seeing the information coming through makes them at ease and makes them easy to use, and so forth. It's a friendly base, and that's one of the key factors that you should factor in when you look at a solution provider. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it is. It should be for everybody using it. So if I automate something and for me or my client, and it makes it super easy for them, but it makes it harder for their vendor, then
Right.
that's still not good. But if it makes it easier for me and more visible for me, and it makes it easy and communication is key on so many things.
Right.
If the communication is there to the end user that wasn't even there before the automation, then that's great, because guess what? I've cut out phone calls. Did you receive my invoice?
Right.
When is it going to be paid? All of those emails, phone calls, they're gone.
Right. Right. So not only the automation, but by cutting out steps or automating steps, making it easier for your staff, also the cutting out of steps, maybe with the interaction with your customers and their customers, because of the fact that everybody's busy today, right? So making their ability to pay or receive payments from your business, and just focusing on the service or the product, is a great way of doing it. So I think that's great. I think that's a good place to end, because I think this was really
Okay.
good. Robin, I want to thank you for joining us today. Is there anything that you would like to add related to automation? Any final tips or wisdom related to automation and why everybody should automate?
Yeah, I think you got all of my analogies, or a good portion of them.
Right.
But I think the last thing in this is just look for a stable company, look for one that's been around, look for one that will have a helpline or a support line, so that if you do have questions, you can get answers. Ask what their uptime is if they're web-based.
Right.
Ask questions about, their company, because you want to make sure that they're going to be around tomorrow. And, test it out, have somebody talk to people if it's new, and because everybody has to start somewhere.
Right.
If it's new, don't discount them just for that, but, say, hey, I want to try you out. This looks really good. If it doesn't work, what's our exit strategy if we have that? So, some of the best things I've had are somebody that were new because they're hungry and they want the feedback as well.
Right.
So, and be a voice. If you have questions or concerns or likes of the software, make sure they know.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Robin, if someone wants to get a hold of you or wants to talk to you or wants to know more about your company, what should they do?
So our website probably has the most information about us. It's varcsolutions.com.
Right.
So that has our phone numbers, our emails, website, Facebook, Twitter, all of our social media is attached to that. So the website's probably the best way to reach us.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Robin.
Thank you.
That wraps up another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to the Spotlight edition of The Successful Bookkeeper with Louis Prosperi. For more information and to access the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening and have a great week.